8,000 miles from Earth, a tiny aluminum capsule slips into shadow. Apollo 8, 3 men inside, and for the next 47 minutes, complete radio silence. The far side of the moon, a place no human eye had ever seen directly, a place Earth's signals cannot reach. When the capsule emerged, the astronauts were pale, shaken. They'd heard something NASA would later dismiss as interference. But the recordings still exist, and what they captured has never been fully explained. Over the decades, dozens of missions, American, Soviet, Chinese, have photographed, scanned, and mapped the moon's hidden hemisphere. But some discoveries were never announced. Some data was never released. And beneath the surface of the far side, something massive is buried, something we still can't identify. This is the story of what we found there, and what we're still afraid to look for. For 50,000 generations, humans looked up at the moon. We tracked its phases. We built myths around it. We used it to navigate oceans and mark the passage of time. But we only ever saw one side. Not because we weren't looking hard enough, but because of physics. The moon is tidally locked to Earth. It spins at exactly the same rated orbits. So the same hemisphere always faces us. Always. The other side? Hidden, invisible, unreachable. Until October 4th, 1959. That's when the Soviet Union's Lunar 3 probe swung around the moon and sent back the first grainy, distorted photographs of the far side. And what it showed wasn't what anyone expected. The near side of the moon, the one we see every night, is covered in dark patches. The ancient astronomers called them Maria Seas. They're actually vast plains of solidified lava formed billions of years ago. But the far side? Almost no Maria. Instead, a brutal, ancient landscape. Craters stacked on craters. Impact scars layered like geological wounds. A surface untouched by volcanism, frozen in time. And at the southern pole, something enormous. The South Pole, Aitken Basin. The South Pole Aitken Basin is over 2,500 kilometers wide, roughly the distance from New York to Denver. It's nearly 13 kilometers deep. Deeper than Mount Everest is tall. It's one of the largest impact craters in the entire solar system. When scientists first analyzed the basin, they realized something profound. Whatever hit the moon to create that crater nearly split it in half. So why does the far side look so different? And what's buried beneath that ancient scar? December 24th, 1968. Apollo 8 becomes the first crewed mission to leave Earth orbit and circle the moon. Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, Bill Anders, 3 men, alone, farther from home than any human had ever been. As they swing behind the far side, radio contact with Houston cuts out. Expected, planned. The moon itself blocks all communication. For 47 minutes, they are completely alone. When they emerge and reestablish contact, everything seems fine. They complete their mission. They return to Earth as heroes. But years later, decades later, something surfaced. Transcripts, audio recordings, debriefing notes that were never meant to be public. According to these documents, the crew of Apollo 8 heard something while they were behind the moon. A sound, described as outer space-type music, a whistling, rhythmic, almost mechanical. It lasted nearly the entire time they were out of contact, and it disturbed them. One astronaut reportedly asked, "You hear that? That whistling sound? Whoa." Say, "That's really weird." NASA's explanation? Radio interference between the command module and the lunar module. 2 pieces of hardware creating a harmonic feedback loop. But here's the thing. Apollo 10 heard it too. So did Apollo 11. Briefly, in 2008, NASA released previously classified audio files under a Freedom of Information Act request. The recordings confirm that multiple Apollo crews reported unusual sounds on the far side. NASA maintains these were equipment related. If it was just interference, why was it never included in the original public transcripts? Why was the audio classified for 40 years? Here's something most people don't know. The far side of the moon is the most radio-silent place accessible to humans in the solar system. On Earth, we're bathed in electromagnetic noise. Radio stations, cell towers, Wi-Fi routers, GPS satellites, military signals. Every piece of modern technology generates a hum of radio waves that blankets the planet. Even in the most remote deserts or deep oceans, that noise exists. But the far side of the moon? Nothing. No Earth-based signals can reach it. The moon's mass blocks everything. No ionospheric interference. No solar radio bursts during the lunar night. It's the perfect place to listen. For decades, astronomers have dreamed of building a radio telescope there, a place where we could detect the faintest whispers from the early universe. Signals from the cosmic dark ages, the period before the first stars ignited, or signals from somewhere else. In 2020, NASA's Innovative Advanced Concepts program funded early studies for the Lunar Crater Radio Telescope, a kilometer-wide antenna to be built inside a far-side crater using autonomous robots. The project remains in conceptual phase, but there's a problem. Building anything on the far side is extraordinarily difficult. No line of sight to Earth means no direct communication. Any rover, any instrument, any human crew would need a relay satellite in orbit just to send data home. The terrain is brutal. The temperature swings are extreme. Lunar nights last 14 Earth days, no solar power. So the data we have from the far side is limited, fragmented, and what we found raises more questions than it answers. January 3rd, 2019. China's Chang'e 4 lander touches down on the far side of the moon. The first time any nation has successfully landed there. The landing site, Von Karman Crater, right in the middle of the South Pole Aitken Basin. The mission carries the U-2 rover Jade Rabbit 2, equipped with ground-penetrating radar, spectrometers, and cameras. Within weeks, the rover begins sending back data. And almost immediately, something unusual appears. The rover detects a substance. The Chinese team describes it as gel-like, shiny, unusually colored, unlike anything seen before on the lunar surface. Later analysis suggests it might be impact glass molten rock from a meteor strike that cooled into a strange, glossy form. But the Chinese Space Agency never released high-resolution images of the substance. No chemical composition data, just brief mentions in official reports. Then, the radar scans. U-2's ground-penetrating radar detected subsurface structures extending more than 40 meters deep, layered formations that don't match standard lunar geology models. These were reported in the journal Science Advances in 2020, but detailed findings remain unpublished. Underground layers, unexpected density variations, geological patterns that suggest something. But what? A buried lava tube? Ancient volcanic activity? Or something we don't have a model for yet? And here's the question no one's answering. Why hasn't the full data set been released? What else did they find down there? June 2019. A team of planetary scientists publishes a study in Geophysical Research Letters. The title, Deep Structure of the Lunar South Pole Aitken Basin. What they found is staggering. Buried beneath the surface of the basin, invisible from above, lies a massive structure. A concentration of dense material, metal, rock, something. It's 5 times the size of the big island of Hawaii. And it weighs 2.18 quintillion kilograms. The study used data from NASA's Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory mission, which mapped the Moon's gravitational field in unprecedented detail. The anomaly was described as a structure of unknown origin. The researchers proposed two explanations. One, it could be the remnants of the asteroid that created the basin, a chunk of iron-rich core material that never fully melted, still embedded in the Moon's mantle. Two, it could be a dense concentration of oxides that crystallized deep within the lunar crust during the Moon's formation, a fossil of the Moon's violent birth. But here's what makes it strange. The anomaly doesn't match either model perfectly. It's denser than expected, deeper than it should be, and positioned in a way that suggests it wasn't just deposited by an impact. So what is it? And why, after 5 years, has no space agency announced a mission to investigate it further? Let me tell you something about space agencies. They're careful, methodical. They document everything. Every transmission, every reading, every anomaly, everything goes into the record. Or it's supposed to. Over the years, researchers and journalists have uncovered gaps. Apollo mission transcripts with entire sections redacted or missing. Audio reels that were accidentally erased. Debriefing reports that contradict official public statements. NASA insists these are just archival errors, budget cuts, tape shortages, bureaucratic inefficiency. But some of the gaps are hard to explain. June 2019. A team of planetary scientists publishes a study in Geophysical Research Letters. The title, Deep Structure of the Lunar South Pole Aitken Basin. What they found is staggering. Buried beneath the surface of the basin, invisible from above, lies a massive structure. A concentration of dense material, metal, rock, something. It's 5 times the size of the big island of Hawaii, and it weighs 2.18 quintillion kilograms. The study used data from NASA's Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory mission, which mapped the Moon's gravitational field in unprecedented detail. The anomaly was described as a structure of unknown origin. The researchers proposed two explanations. One, it could be the remnants of the asteroid that created the basin, a chunk of iron-rich core material that never fully melted, still embedded in the Moon's mantle. Two, it could be a dense concentration of oxides that crystallized deep within the lunar crust during the Moon's formation, a fossil of the Moon's violent birth. But here's what makes it strange. The anomaly doesn't match either model perfectly. It's denser than expected, deeper than it should be, and positioned in a way that suggests it wasn't just deposited by an impact. So what is it? And why, after 5 years, has no space agency announced a mission to investigate it further? Let me tell you something about space agencies. They're careful, methodical. They document everything. Every transmission, every reading, every anomaly, everything goes into the record. Or it's supposed to. Over the years, researchers and journalists have uncovered gaps. Apollo mission transcripts with entire sections redacted or missing. Audio reels that were accidentally erased. Debriefing reports that contradict official public statements. NASA insists these are just archival errors, budget cuts, tape shortages, bureaucratic inefficiency. But some of the gaps are hard to explain. Apollo 11's original SSTV broadcast tapes, the highest quality video recordings of the moon landing, were permanently erased in the 1980s. NASA claimed the tapes were recorded over to save money during a data storage shortage. The sharpest images of humanity's greatest achievement gone forever. Now, maybe that's true. Maybe it really was just a clerical mistake. But it raises a question. What else might have been lost or set aside? There are stories unverified but persistent of Apollo astronauts being debriefed separately from their public press conferences, of questions they weren't allowed to answer, of observations that never made it into the flight logs, not because they saw aliens, but because they saw anomalies, things that didn't fit the models, data points that would require explanations NASA wasn't ready to give. So when we talk about what NASA saw, we're not just talking about images, we're talking about what was recorded, what was preserved, and what was quietly shelved. Here's what I believe is really happening. NASA isn't hiding aliens. They're not covering up ancient ruins or extraterrestrial artifacts. What they're hiding, or at least not rushing to explain, is uncertainty. Because the far side of the moon still contains geological features we can't fully model, gravitational anomalies we haven't explained, subsurface structures we haven't explored, acoustic phenomena we've dismissed as interference. And admitting that comes with consequences. Funding, public confidence, international competition. If NASA says, we don't know what's beneath the South Pole Aitken Basin, that's a vulnerability. It invites questions. It invites rivals. In the new space race, data is power. China, India, Russia, and private companies are all racing back to the moon. Whoever controls the far side, its resources, its silence, its strategic position, controls humanity's next step into deep space. So the silence isn't sinister, it's strategic, but it comes at a cost. Because while we delay, while we debate, while we redact and classify and wait for more data, the window to explore openly, transparently, and scientifically is closing. There is a plan. It's been on the drawing board for years, refined, reproposed, quietly funded in small increments. The Lunar Crater Radio Telescope. The idea: build a massive radio antenna, a full kilometer wide, inside a crater on the moon's far side. No scaffolding, no rigid structure, just a wire mesh deployed by autonomous robots across the natural bowl of a crater, suspended and shaped by the moon's own topology. From there, in absolute radio silence, we would listen. Not for signals from nearby stars, but for whispers from the cosmic dark ages, the time before galaxies, before the first light. We'd be hearing the universe as it was 13 billion years ago. And maybe, just maybe, we detect something else. A technosignature, a pattern, a modulation, a signal that couldn't be natural. The LCRT concept study estimates the telescope could detect radio emissions from the epoch of reionization wavelengths completely drowned out by Earth's ionosphere. No ground-based telescope can do this, and no space telescope has the collecting area required. Only the far side of the moon makes this possible. But the project is stalled, underfunded, deprioritized. Why? Because it's not flashy. It doesn't put boots on the ground. It doesn't mine helium-3 or build moon bases. It just listens. And maybe we're not ready to hear the answer. But what if the answer is already there, waiting? What if we've been silent because we're afraid of what might respond? Let me take you somewhere. Imagine it's 2042. The Lunar Crater Radio Telescope is operational. An autonomous AI system monitors it from orbit. Data streams back to Earth every lunar day. For months, nothing, just static. Cosmic background radiation, the faint, uniform hiss of the universe cooling. Then, one transmission cycle, something shifts. A pattern, not random, not natural, repeating. At first, scientists think it's interference, a glitch in the processing algorithm. But the signal is too clean, too structured. They run it through every filter, every model. It's not human. It's not from Earth. And it's not from nearby. The frequency suggests an origin billions of light years away from a time when the universe was young, when the first galaxies were forming. But the modulation, the way the signal pulses, pauses, and repeats, suggests intentionality. Someone something sent this, and the far side of the moon is the only place quiet enough to hear it. Now, I'm not saying this will happen. I'm saying it could. And we'd never know if we don't look. Here's the uncomfortable truth. We are in a narrow window of history. Right now, space exploration is still driven, at least partially, by scientific curiosity, by the desire to understand, to discover. But that window is closing. The next phase of lunar exploration will be dominated by resource extraction, by military positioning, by corporate interests. And once that happens, the far side of the moon won't be a place of science. It'll be a place of control. China has already announced plans for a permanent lunar research station on the far side by the early 2030s. If a single nation dominates access to that region, they control the most valuable scientific and strategic position in the inner solar system. This isn't about nationalism. It's about what we lose when exploration becomes privatized, when data becomes classified, when the questions we're allowed to ask are determined by whoever owns the territory. The far side of the moon is the last place in our immediate reach where we can still look outward, not inward. Where we can still ask, are we alone? Instead of, how much is this worth? So the question isn't just what we'll find, it's whether we'll even be allowed to look. I've spent years thinking about why we haven't gone back, why the far side remains so sparsely explored, why missions are proposed, funded, and then quietly shelved. And I think it's because the far side represents something we're not ready to face. Not aliens, not artifacts, but scale. The far side forces us to confront how small we are, how much we don't know, how fragile our understanding of the universe really is. When we look at the near side of the moon, we see a companion, a neighbor, something familiar. But when we look at the far side, when we see those ancient craters, that buried mass, those unexplained signals, we see the universe as it actually is. Vast, old, indifferent. And that is terrifying. But it's also the most important thing we can do. The far side of the moon is not cursed. It's not haunted. It's not hiding alien bases or ancient civilizations. But it is hiding something. The truth about how the moon formed. The truth about what lies beneath its crust. And maybe, just maybe, the truth about whether we're the only ones listening. As of 2025, only 4 nations have successfully landed spacecraft on the moon: the United States, the Soviet Union, China, and India. Only one China has landed on the far side, and only once. We have the technology to go back. We have the robots, the rockets, the radar, the resolve. What we need is the will to confront what we find. Not because it will be comfortable, but because it's the only way forward. The far side of the moon is a mirror. It shows us how much we've achieved and how much farther we have to go. And it reminds us that the greatest discoveries don't come from what we already understand. They come from the places we can't see, from the signals we haven't decoded, from the questions we're still afraid to ask. So maybe it's time we stop discussing what NASA didn't say and start demanding what they will do next. Thanks for spending this time with me. Before you go, I want to know, do you think we're ready to return to the far side? And what do you believe is buried beneath that anomaly? Drop your thoughts below. And subscribe, because the story of what's out there is far from over.